we've been around for a long time. And because we've been around for a long time, we learn over that periods of time and we become wise in our ways and how we deal with things. So today's webinar is based on this 40 years of learning, of being part of bill processing, and the major lessons that we've learned along the way. So since we've been around for 40 years, we've had a number of innovations over that time period where we've had to both keep up with transformations in technology. So we're on our 8th generation of software that provides value to our customers. We've also had to upkeep with trends in the industry. What's been very constant over those 40 years, regardless of all the things we've had to build and versions and platforms we've had to recreate and reinvent ourselves on, is that utility bill information is incredibly valuable. And it hasn't lost its value over this time period. In fact, it's only grown because we're looking at different elements of utility bills differently. Decades ago, it was focused on cost, and then it was focused on usage. And today we're looking at demand value, charges, and we're even applying CO2 emission factors to utility bills to report our carbon emissions. So utility bill value has still been a constant over these 40 years of innovation that we've been doing this. Utility bill is key to help driving savings. It's really foundational to anything you're doing from an energy management standpoint. It's what I would look at as the low-hanging fruit. You get utility bills. If you manage buildings, you own or lease space, you get bills. It's a necessary evil for occupying space and operating buildings. So in our network, we have over 10,000 energy and sustainability leaders that need that foundational data to help them drive savings. Our experience, we today are managing in our world over $20 billion worth of vendor bills. And I recently looked at about what the average bill that we're tracking is. And interestingly, it's about $2,000 per average bill. And some of these bills are very large bills and some are very small bills. If it's just a small structure, it's in a park somewhere, maybe it's just a restroom facility or something like that. So we're tracking all different types of facilities, shapes and sizes, but over $20 billion worth of annual utility bills are being tracked, and that is very substantial. And of that, our customers are taking advantage of using that data foundationally to incur savings. And the savings are very strategic to help them justify additional projects, to maintain efficiency in buildings. But again, most of the data that they're benchmarking on is on that vendor data. The idea being get good data into our software and into analytics and get good value out. So the bill data is very foundational. We'd like to take a poll. And interestingly, we want to know from you. So can you please answer this question? How are you processing your utility bills today? Are you manually entering? Are you importing? Is it a mix of both? Are you currently subscribing to bill capture, and of which case Jerry and team are working with? Or maybe you don't know. Maybe you just look at data and you don't know where it's coming from. So as the results are coming in, kind of interesting. I'm maybe not overly surprised, but the number one, it looks like, is a mix of manual and import of entry. So getting some bills through paper, maybe PDFs, and then keying them into systems. Hopefully it's Energy Cap, but maybe a different system, and maybe getting some data from some vendors through Excel files and other workable files. The next is manual entry, 100%. So getting bills and keying them. A number of you are importing bills. Sounds like the vendors you work with provide that data. And still 10% of you say you don't know. Well, hopefully this webinar is helping shape your decision making for going forward. Either if you don't know, maybe you want to dig in and find out what your organization is doing, or if you do know and you're one of the groups of the about 38% that's doing a mix of manual and import, maybe you want to take advantage of different processes if those aren't working for you. So thanks for the poll. Okay. We actually have another question here to build on that. How many times in your organization are bills being entered into systems? So think of it this way. You get a bill, what happens to it? Does it go into your accounting system to be paid? Are you entering it into an energy management system? Are you also entering it into Energy Star, Portfolio Manager, or other types of systems? This is a very kind of interesting question here because I'm really curious on this call to see how many times a bill is being touched for each organization. There are many benefits of streamlining this, but the results that are coming in, again, I'm not overly surprised at. It looks like about half of you are entering bills twice. So that means a bill is coming to your organization, your team, your coworkers, you're spending time to enter and process a bill 2 times. So about 48%, about 50% of you. I'm guessing that would be into an energy management system and then also to accounting. 35% of you 1 time. So bill data is going into a system and then being fed, I'm guessing, to other systems, or maybe it's just going to accounting and you're paying it and you're not doing anything else with it. And then another 20% of you are, your organizations are touching bills 3, 4, or more times. That's really, interesting to know. And hopefully what you get out of this presentation is it doesn't have to be that way, and there are greener pastures. So thank you for that. Helpful to set the tone for the webinar. Our mission as a company is to develop software that is the single source of truth of your information. Okay, and we have a couple different platforms under our Energy Cap umbrella that makes up what we call an ERP system, an enterprise resource planning system, that is the single source of truth of data. Foundationally to driving, savings and doing reporting activities is this utility bill data. It's very essential to everything that you're doing. And what we're working with clients on is do whatever we can to streamline the collection and entry processes of the bill data, and then allow that to feed everything else. So you have a consolidated process, but that data that's being collected can then be fed everywhere else. So you'll notice even in this graphic, we have different modules as part of our framework. Foundationally, our capture services, our bill capture services, help provide the data to empower our customers to get value out of their information. Let's talk about some myths versus the reality of how utility bills can be received and what utility vendors typically are able to do. So let's start with some of the myths. Utility bills over 40 years have gotten easier to handle. Not true. They are just as complex, if not more complex, than they were 40 years ago. Utilities have APIs. I hear this a lot myself, where organizations say, hey, you could just get bills through an API. No, not true. I don't really know of any utility company that just says, here's a trusted portal that you can write API calls and go get your data from. So that is not true. That's probably the largest myth that I hear out there. It just doesn't happen. Utility companies do not provide data that way. Utility companies provide easy access to electronic files. Yeah, some do, a lot don't. A lot do not provide good workable data to allow you to do energy management activities and less time processing and collecting data. And then kind of lastly, the concept of green button. And green button was really meant to be a game changer in the industry. The concept of let me go to my vendor website and download my data. Well, here's what you find. Green button's an afterthought. It's not billing grade. They don't handle rebills and cancel bills as part of the green button feed. They don't even provide details of your bills. It's like, billing period, start date, end date, use cost. That's what's provided. Yes, it's access to data, and it's a start. And I'm not being overly critical here. I'm just saying it's not as complete and as easy and streamlined as you want it to be. Interesting also about Green Button, I've talked to a few large investor-owned utility companies that have openly admitted that the Green Button feed, you have to write programming and be certified, like to go get the data in some cases. And they recognize that not every end organization is going to have the IT wherewithal and expertise to be able to go get the data yourself. So it's very cumbersome in a lot of cases to use. It is accessible though, and that is positive. The reality, it really gets to be difficult to identify sources and formats of data. For many of our customers, they have tens, hundreds, even, in some cases, 1,000 or more utility companies that they're using, getting bills from, and very difficult because none of them are standard. They don't have standard formats. They don't have standard delivery methods. And it's very difficult to get your arms around all of that. The timeliness of the delivery is difficult. If you get a paper bill, you get it. You got a few days to turn it around and pay it. The acquisition, are you getting it manually through paper? Can you get it digitally or better yet, automated in some way? There's complexity of data exchanges and formats. You're going to hear the concept of EDI 810. EDI is an ANSI standard for utility bills. It's not adopted real heavily out there. It's adopted by, maybe 40 of the large investor-owned utilities, but not by everyone, and it was supposed to be. So there's difficulties in formats, and what one utility provides from a flat file or Excel format, another utility provides a completely different format. So very cumbersome and difficult to work with. All of this to say, all of this, the concept of getting access to just the data, it distracts you from energy management and sustainability activities. It is not easy. Utility companies have made some progress over time, and they've implemented various options to make it easier for you. So take an example, summary bills. This is an example of one of our customers' summary bills from Pico. Summary bills are fantastic if you're an accounting person and you want quick, easy access to make a payment. Fantastic, right? Hundreds of meters on one summary account. You just look at the end number, write a check, off you go. And you can even make an ACH payment to make it even quicker. So summary bills, they tie, a bunch of accounts and meters together into one account. It's easier and quicker to pay, but there's potentially, some issues with understanding every bill line item. There's issues with rebills and corrections, and it sounds good on the surface, and some of our clients have great relationships with their vendors. So from a payment standpoint, they've solved a bunch of issues of streamlining how to get payments quicker and how to do it consolidated. But you as an energy manager, it's not necessarily great because, some summary bills we've seen, they remove like all the use charges. And so, you have to calculate that and figure out what each of those are, or they've removed all the individual cost charges and they just summarize it in total. So from an accounting payment standpoint, great. Energy management standpoint, sometimes not great. Another option that's meant to really help is our vendor websites. And yes, they do help. You can get access to your data online. You can get access to PDF and, green button data and flat files. Fantastic. I'm showing an example here. This is actually my house. I log into my vendor portal and I download my PDFs and I enter the data into EnergyCap and I download my interval data, my smart meter data from my utility provider and also load it. It's not automated, but I have to manually do it. This is one location. When you have hundreds, tens, hundreds, and potentially even over 1,000 locations, very difficult to do for each utility company. So again, helpful that the websites exist for you to be able to go in, but accounts are typically not consolidated. You have one login per account. Bill data in some cases are summarized on the web portal. You still need to look at the PDF for all the rich details. And a lot of these websites have minimal analysis tools. And if they do, it's for one company and you might have 20 utility companies. So it doesn't give you a complete picture. So a lot to be desired with websites. And then we get to electronic billing and EDI 810. EDI was launched in the mid-90s. It was an initiative by the U.S. Department of Commerce. The main idea was there was an exchange of value here where utility companies would provide an electronic bill in exchange for an electronic payment. So the idea of let's really streamline the bill collection and processing issue and receipt of payment. Big exchange there. Utility companies don't need to print bills, send them in the mail, pay for postage, and you don't have to print checks and send it. This was not heavily adopted the way that I think was originally anticipated as it was in the 90s. Again, maybe 40, maybe 50 large investor-owned utilities implement EDI. A lot of the implementation of it is unique to each vendor and a little bit different. There's a major cost and technical challenge to implementing EDI. If you kind of try to do it on your own, good luck, right? EDI is also an ANSI standard for other types of bills. And I know many organizations that have implemented successfully EDI for other bills, but utility bills tend to be more complex. Rates tend to change, line items change a lot more than other types of bills. So EDI can be very challenging. And a lot of the success of EDI was potentially bypassed by improvements of OCR and web scraping and accessibility to green button or flat files and some other services that utility websites now provide. EDI is still a great option if you have a lot of volume of bills by the vendors that provide it. It still provides a ton of value, but just realize it was meant to kind of take over the world in the 90s and was never really adopted that way. So let's take another poll here. The poll is just real simply, I understand all of my bill line items. So let's see what the results here. And think about all the different bills that you're getting from different vendors. I'm just interested to know if you understand all of your bill line items. So results trickling in, kind of going back and forth. It looks about 70-30 for no, I don't understand them all, and yes, I do. And kind of hang in there. So we'll just call it maybe 70-30, 65-35 of no, I don't understand all the line items, and yes, I do. Well, I'll tell you this. I have decades of experience helping customers track utility bills, and I've seen them all, and Jerry's team's seen them all. And although we're experts, we probably still, every month, we're seeing a new bill line item, and we don't always understand all of them. We do our best to understand. It is very difficult because utility companies, they're just always evolving and changing, and regulatory requirements are changing, and each vendor in each area, just how they bill is changing. It is very difficult. So we provide tools to help you better understand them and categorize them and things like that. But utility bills are not easy. They're very complex. So we are with you, that's 70 or 65% that said no. What we've learned is utility bills haven't become simpler or easier to understand. Utility companies are still running off some legacy systems. And so it just, they have some challenges in implementing some of their rates. There's new mandates and new fees and surcharges. Um, they have customer options these days, which makes bill design and presentation a bit more challenging. We see a number of complexities with net metering and renewable tracking and supply billing and consolidated billing and things like that that have made utility bills very, very challenging. In fact, way more complex than they have been, and that seems to be the trend. And there's not really any level of standardization on bill line item naming conventions. So what one vendor calls a certain item, another vendor calls it something vastly different. And so it's your job as just the consumer to make sense of it. And I look at a lot of our customers, they're energy managers, they're engineers, sustainability leaders. Like, they're not experts on utility rates. A lot of you subscribe to procurement services, like, to help understand rates and options and things like that. All you want to know is, like, what are some of the basic charges? And when those charges have different names and they vary vendor by vendor, it's very complicated. And you could spend a lot of time just trying to learn what all those things are. So, important to have the tooling to help understand what those are. Utility bills still have a lot of different types of cost recovery opportunities on them. So very, very important lesson learned, especially with electric accounts. They can really help save in a lot of ways. There's numbers of rates that exist today that maybe didn't when your account existed. Again, we have a lot of customers that have buildings that are old, that they've had under management for a long, long time. And when they opened a utility account, the rates were vastly different than they are today. And we see a lot of customers that just don't even question what the rate is. It's just, here's my bill, here's some of the charges, off we go, we're going to pay it. The other interesting thing is that building loads and the use of the buildings have changed over time. And you probably put a lot of effort into retrofits and projects within buildings and less effort into keeping up with the rate that is most appropriate for that building now that the use of it and the nature of that building has changed. So important to really keep tabs on the rate structure of your bill and also understand how your building is performing and how it may have changed over time and what the now current usage is and how that matches up with the best rate. Over time, we've learned that there's a lot of different billing errors that can be on bills, but we'd like to kind of look at this in three main areas that tend to be themes that we've learned over time. So one of them is an account ownership issue. We hosted Catalyst last year, and one of our panelist speakers said an activity that he encourages is to go out and physically look at your meter at all your buildings. Because again, the nature of buildings change. Buildings get sold, they get renovated. The utility company is sending you what they know, and it's not like they're going out to the site all the time and looking at where a meter lives and what building it's connected to. So we see a lot of account ownership issues. So good to understand what you're getting billed for, where, and maybe even looking at the meter and making sure that it's under your management. Another one is meter multipliers. So the wrong multiplier, different types of units of measure. It's one of these issues where the utility company, their billing engine might not meet the meter that they've now installed, especially if they're installing smart meters. They might just have the multipliers wrong. And so you're getting abnormal billed usage when it's just a meter multiplier issue. So, good to keep your eye on those kinds of things. And then lastly, taxes and fees. Just what all are you being charged for? Are you exempt from some of these? We work with a lot of governments that are exempt from some of the taxes, and they might show up on line items, and they're not even really, if you're just kind of looking at use and cost, you're not really looking at some of those details, and you could be overpaying just simply because you're exempt from various charges. So enter bill capture. There's a lot of challenges with receiving bills, with making sense of line items on bills, with processing them, and then using them for reporting. We want to make your life a lot easier. So we have built a service over learning all of these challenges over time and adapting and figuring out the best technologies that we can leverage and the best services we can leverage to solve these problems for you. Our service was originally rooted on receiving bills electronically, so adopting EDI 810. Just a bit of an anecdote, in the 90s when EDI was implemented, we were the very first company to do an end-to-end EDI to hand off to an accounting system, to the accounting system paying the vendor electronically. We were the first company to implement that. And the sheer nature of us helping clients get bills accurately and timely really started with bill imports and EDI. And then, over the years, we worked with clients to get other types of formats of bills, text files, Excel files, even XML files. So that was really what was foundationally available over time. Then enter OCR, or optical character recognition. Technologies of scanning images and allowing you to map line items have really advanced. And we started looking at OCR in 2009. And so we started adapting to say it's not just bill importing, but it's also, let's see what technology's out there for doing more with, call it paper or scanned images, because more of our customers and more of the industry, doesn't get bill imports because not every vendor provides files. So how can we still help? Today, we're processing, over 130,000 bills. And it's about a mix of, electronic bills, EDI and other formats, and then PDF or OCR bills. So really high and growing volumes in the OCR world because of the nature that utility companies are still providing paper PDF files, and they're readily available. We have experience mapping over 4,000 unique vendors. So a lot of different line items. Again, we're constantly learning. That's why I was saying earlier, we don't know everything. We're experts, but we're still growing because our list of vendors, and even North American and international vendors, and some of the unique vendors across the world, we're still growing in that area as well. Over 200 organizations are utilizing the service, and we have customers that range from tens of bills to tens of thousands of bills. So we're helping customers of all different shapes and sizes. Now, why are we doing this? Because we've learned over time. We've learned that, I'm calling it the 7 lessons that we've learned. I hopefully gave you a good foundation of why we do bill capture and why we are where we are, but really 7 lessons that we've learned to make it valuable for our customers. So the first one is that it saves time. The second, we're human and software helps catch errors. 3, the devil is in the details. 4, effective leaders make data-driven decisions faster. Number 5, better data equals better processes. Number 6, expanding your team is possible without hiring. And then the 7th one, spend your time on things that matter most. To restate our mission, we help you derive value out of your energy information through our technology-based solutions. You need accurate, accessible, and timely data. And the theme of this is that data is rooted in the utility bill. So if you can get more timely, more accurate, more detailed utility bill data, it can make your job a lot more valuable and a lot easier. So speaking of making your job easier, who wouldn't want some time back in their day? I know I certainly would. time is valuable. We found that it takes a lot of time to capture bills, and especially if you want to capture all the details of bills, it takes a lot of time just to do the collection work and do the data extrapolation and get all the details. It's very disruptive to various activities, especially payment side. What we have found over the years is that accounting departments that receive bills, they don't really identify errors in the same way that you might want. What accounting systems are tracking is just cost and maybe vendor code and the billing period. They're not tracking all the details. The sheer nature of utility bills causes delays, which then translate to late fees, and there's a lot of cumbersome processes just to get a bill paid. And part of the issue with some of the time pieces of this is if you're spending a lot of time processing bills, you might then incur late fees, which just adds more cost to the process. So it's really a double-edged sword there if you're taking too much time to process a bill. Some of the issues with processing bills is just the incoming mail, the exercise of receiving bills, opening them, sorting them, and distributing them for approvals. There's issues of just some of the data on the processing of bills. So call it the things you're being billed for. So the names and the location, and you got to assign GL codes and create batches and assign charges properly. There's time that gets wasted on just entering the data, keying data, verifying data, and making any necessary updates to data and reconciling and things like that. And then last, you got to provide data to energy management. So a lot of time being spent on some of these, call them mundane processes, just to get a bill entered, validated, and approved and paid. One of our clients that made the transition from manual entry to a automated bill capture process was estimating that an individual was saving 40 plus hours per month. They're no longer, going through these cumbersome, time-intensive processes, and they're really freeing up their time to do more important functions. So this is just one example. We have many examples in this case where customers are saving a lot of different time. We hear this frequently, that bills come in, someone eyeballs them, and then they'll go and be paid. Yeah, I get it. A lot of you understand, the regular cadence of your bills and kind of know what to spot check. But having an integration of the data coming in and then a software that's catching the errors on your behalf smartly is a very powerful combination. So the most common source of savings that we have seen are billing errors, because utility companies aren't perfect and mistakes do happen. If bills are going to your accounting team and they're processing the bills, a lot of time they're just prioritizing making sure that payments are on time and not necessarily accuracy. Someone needs to verify the accuracy. So if bill data is received timely and it's captured accurately, then you have a lot of opportunities to catch errors. And the Energy Cap system can do the error catching for you automatically. So just some stats for you. One of 16 bills, like we did a study recently, and one of 16 bills are flagged as potential issues in all of our databases. That's pretty substantial. 55% of flagged bills result in some level of action. So 35,000 plus cases were just of issues where there were a lot of estimated bills, and estimated bills have their own set of problems where if a vendor can't get to your meter and read, then they're just sending you a lot of estimation and you don't get accurate and actual readings. And so that is a problem, and you should look into that. And a number, 100,000 bills were just duplicate bills, where customers were entering a second bill and the system flagged it like, hey, you've already entered this. So in that case, it's just someone forgetting that maybe they entered, stack of bills already. So a lot of potential issues, and it's great to have this checks and balances in place on all the data. Another summary is over $166 million of flagged bills were voided. So this just demonstrates the issue where there's an issue with collection of data, with potential even of the auditing of the data, but hopefully the auditing was able to spot these issues, and then the customer was able to say, well, let's void this and make sure that we're not paying these. The bill capture process is designed so this doesn't happen. It's designed to catch errors on bills, but designed, to be very strategic about, capturing a bill one time and entering it once. The other side to catching errors is the audits that we put out there have gotten smarter over time. We're now using prediction methods rather than just benchmarking against history. We still use history as part of the prediction model, but we're now predicting what a bill value should be and then auditing against it. So again, another study. Over a 4-month period, we did a study about how great just is the prediction method valuable? Does it pay off? And we found that we flagged, thousands of bills with demand issues, tens of thousands that are outlier bills from a use and or a cost standpoint. And the main methodology is let's create, a statistical model looking at historical data, impacts of weather. We go back and look at the, weather for the billing period. And then we're predicting cost, use, and demand values, taking into account impacts of weather, seasonality, the months of the year and things like that. And then we're auditing against how far out the true bill is to the predicted model from a standard deviation standpoint. And we've notified over 500 customers that one or more of their bills is severe, is outside of this predicted model that equates to $126 million worth of bills. I'm not necessarily saying that the bills are invalid. It's just keeping a watchful eye on a bill, and we've developed better ways to audit the bill data coming in. The next one, the devil is in the details. And I love this concept. I very much love it for what we're doing, is because we're very detail oriented. You have challenges, and you got to make sure that you have technology that can, keep up with all of the challenges that you have. Granularity on bills help to uncover many issues, and they help to uncover and answer a lot of questions. They can help with estimation bills and mixed units of measure and meter multipliers and double counting if you get supply, use, and distribution on a consolidated bill, or even if they're separate bills. Issues with load factor or power factor, tracking at least late fees and just seeing, are your processes to pay a bill just a little too slow, and demand issues and other things. I give you this bill as an example. This is an actual bill entered into the system by one of our customers. And notice something about it. The audits caught this one and said, hey, the cost is 7% higher on a daily basis, and the unit cost is 10% higher, but the usage is lower. And when you look at this bill, I looked at this and said, well, wait a minute, if my use is lower and my cost is higher, that doesn't seem right. And you look at it and you say, well, the unit cost went up. But something very important about this bill that this customer tracked is just the use and cost. So what is this doing? It's creating a blended unit cost that then gets applied. What we don't have on this bill are demand charges. Okay, let me go back. This is looking at use and cost. Now, if my usage is down, I would expect cost to potentially be down unless unit cost is off the chart. I highly doubt that unit cost increased 10% month over month. Now, we know rates have been going up, but 10% is pretty excessive. So my thought about this, I haven't verified it, My thought about this particular bill is that there's a demand component of this bill that's not being captured by the energy manager, and that demand value is really driving the total cost, as such, inflating the blended unit cost. So when you have the details, it's really valuable so you can better understand your charges and your rates. Demand charges specifically represent 30 to 70% of most commercial customers' electric bills. So think about that. That bill we were looking at, if demand represents, call it half the charges, yeah, the usage was down. So the energy manager is doing a great job at reducing usage, but maybe not doing a good job at managing demand. And if demand is that large of a component on a bill, then you're not potentially maximizing your savings from a cost standpoint because they're focused on the usage. Having the granularity of all the bill details is very important. The other thing that's important to understand are concepts like build and actual demand, okay? Again, a double in the details. What I'm trying to communicate here is demand, one component of your bill can be a major cost driver, even though what you're doing in your building is energy management and reducing usage. So the idea of tracking build and actual demand helps to look at things like demand ratchets. So this bill to the right, if you look at it, what it's saying is that the actual demand for this period was 183 kilowatts. However, they have a demand ratchet, which charges them for the highest peak over the last 11 months. So the highest peak was 191 kilowatts. So they're using that 191 on this bill as their demand charge, meaning they had a mistake. They had one spike in a month, one of 11 months ago, and they're still paying for it today. So, at least in Energy Cat, we're tracking what your actual demand is, which is the blue line. And your demand, you might be really trying to limit demand, but your bill demand based on a ratchet could be much higher than really what your current month's actual demand is. And so understanding those components is very valuable when you see, again, going back to this example, your cost went up, but your use went down. You can't understand why in this bill example because the client is not tracking all the details. So really important to track the details. Okay, the next one, effective leaders make data-driven decisions faster. So if you're entering bills quickly and timely, you can start to make decisions more timely. What I'm showing here, again, is from a client. It's the fact that we are in October. Today is October 12th. That when I look back just 1 month ago, the September time period, this is total cost of their organization. And notice September is incredibly low. Why is that? Because bills aren't being entered that quickly into the system. So for them to report September is an utter waste. So they can't start to get value out of their data. They generally have to look 2 months in the past. And that's okay, but maybe you want to make decisions faster and you need that data quicker. So, you got to keep that in mind. If you're still reporting, you call it post-pay, that's okay. Maybe this is acceptable. But if you are, wanting to report, timely data from an accounting standpoint, September, the books are already closed. And in this case, it's pretty clear that all the bills haven't been entered yet. So really difficult to make quick decisions and make them faster if there's a lag in data. Most utility bills, that we get our hands on can be entered within 1 to 7 days of the vendor generating it. And the reason it's 1 to 7 is it really greatly varies when the vendor generates the bill and the format of the bill. If it's an EDI bill, it would be like day of generation. If it's, call it a, we have to go in and grab the PDF, it takes a few extra days. But implementing a better entry process can really, allow you to get the bills very quickly, 1 to 7 days from when the vendor generates it, as opposed to waiting for it to come in the mail and, days of processing and sitting on a desk and someone opening and getting it entered. So much more timely there, so you can start to report much quicker. A quote from one of our clients: "We now spend more time evaluating utility vendor data than processing." So they're spending more time in making decisions faster because they're not spending that same time just processing the data. A better streamlined entry process helps with other types of processes, accounting related processes. What we like to communicate is have one point of bill entry, 1 point. That's why we asked the poll earlier. Many of you still have bills that are being entered into multiple systems. In our world, with our software, we can help you get the bill data in very accurately and timely, 1 point of entry, and then feed other systems. But we get the question, bills still need to be paid. Yeah, understood. Energy Cap can interface with your accounting system, so the bills can come in. There's workflow steps to approve and audit bills, and you can escalate, issues and get them resolved and keep track of notes. However, the workflow needs to be set up, but bills get entered, they get approved, and then you can export to a financial system then to generate payment. You can also re-import payment details back into the system. So what happened there? It's 1 point of entry, some workflow steps, and then bills are being handed off to your accounting system to be paid. Bills then can also flow into Energy Star and other systems as well, because there's APIs built into Energy Cap that can feed other systems. The whole key of it is the 1 point of entry, and hopefully it's through a service like bill capture, so it's accurately and timely. This helps to eliminate late fees and other types of payment issues. You can properly handle cancel rebills and have more time on handling the exceptions rather than time spent, just processing. There's also processes built into both bill capture and the software to handle bills overdue from vendors and missing bills, which is also a very important step. You can expand your team. Jerry and the bill capture team have staff that more or less become an outsourced function, an extension of your team. So in the system and in our processes, we do have automated alerts and report distributions and some workflow dashboards to specifically help streamline various processes. Okay. So there's the technology that helps, kind of become some of your team by helping, dangle a carrot when there's problems and helping with some automation steps. But the many nuances of utility bills really make it difficult to handle that. We've also been in touch with a lot of our customers that over time, just the nature of utility bills and the energy industry make it difficult to hire. It becomes a little bit more specialized than some of the other bills that you might receive. So we can help. We have services. We can function like a part-time equivalent or a full-time equivalent on your behalf. So you don't have to deal with issues of turnover, hiring, onboarding, and continue education of your team. We can do some things for you. So the bill capture service can not only receive and enter your bills, but our team can also help you follow up on missing and overdue bills, to engage with your vendors, to monitor and address issues. We find that we can potentially staff this more cost effective than you can, and also remove some issues of retention. We've seen this all during the COVID era, where just turnover was high in many cases, and then you have to onboard and staff. So we do have these services that you can adopt to help you with your day-to-day processing. And then we get to the last one: spend time on things that matter the most. Monitor your consumption and cost, do rate optimization activities, implement projects, do benchmarking and compliance reporting, go for a walk, take a nap, do anything that you want to do that's not just the exercise of manually, processing bills. We want you to enjoy what you're doing. And so spend time on those activities that matter the most. There always is this question of, what do services like bill capture cost? Like, great, we want to streamline our process. but we have little to no budget, or we need to understand what our ROI would be. It's, I think, very healthy exercise to calculate your internal costs to process a bill. And if you want to do this exercise, you got to take a few things into consideration, because you can't just go, well, here's this one person who does bill entry. What are we paying them? And then that's our cost. That's not really the actual costs. Direct labor costs on salary, yes, that is part of it. So you need to look at what are the costs to receive bills, to process them, to enter them from your staff. You also got to look at indirect costs, like quality control processes and handling exceptions and various technologies for imaging and support of that team. Then you have equipment costs of PCs. Someone needs a PC to enter data. Maybe you have scanners, or you have other types of telecommunications that go into the operations of the team. Postage and supplies. You have administrative overhead, so supervisors and training and the actual cost of space within a building. And then, maybe other fees, managing PO boxes to receive bills, things like that. What experts have calculated over the years is that it costs organizations $10 to $20 per bill to process a bill. So let me restate that. Experts have calculated, with all of those things considered, that it generally costs an organization between $10 to $20 to process a bill. So that is maybe the number. Hopefully, if you do some research, you would be like, hey, John wasn't lying here. It maybe is around that ballpark. And it could be much higher too, depending on volume and some other factors. So with that in mind, our expert team would be happy to engage with you and talk about the fees that we charge for the service. So if you're interested in bill capture, the idea is we can acquire bills in any format. We can process any type of format and get them into the system for you. And in order to provide a quote, we walk through a consultative step where we have different levels of service. So we have a standard service where we can just receive and enter bills. We have the advanced service where we can start to take action on your bills, and premium where we can engage with your vendors and take even more action. You then need to understand how we're going to acquire bills and the formats. So do we acquire bills on your behalf pre or post pay? So is it a live bill, or does it also go to your accounting system and then we process it? We need to know the number of bills, or what we call transactions, that we need to process, how we're going to acquire them, and the formats. And there's pros and cons of every format. So different data richness in paper than there is with flat files. We leverage optical character recognition technology for paper, PDF, and scanned bills. And you can send those to us in the STP exchange. We can go to vendor websites and download them. You can email them, or you can mail those to us, and we'll open the mail and scan and process. We can connect to thousands of vendors to download PDFs, where we use login credentials and scrape the vendor website, download bills, and process them. We can set up EDI exchanges and convert your paper bills into EDI, so you can process those timely and accurately. And then last thing, we still do work with flat files. So some vendors implement flat files in a very nice way, and we can process those as well. So after our team consults with you, we will provide a proposal. There's an annual fee based on the number of bills or transactions that we're processing, and the pricing is dependent on the volume and the acquisition methods. And then there's a one-time fee just to get everything mapped and to get data configured and workflow established and get bills flowing. I hope this was helpful, and I thank you for listening today. And want to put a special plug in. We do training events. We have some already scheduled for next year. So one in London in February 2024, and then our large Catalyst event that's going to be hosted in Denver, Colorado in May 2024. Thank you.